Welcome to Turn Talks, the podcast that bridges the gaps between college and career. Join your host, Tina Fox, founder of Turn Mentoring, as she brings together corporate leaders, educators, and university alumni to share practical wisdom and equip you with confidence, clarity, and connection.
Hi, everyone. This is Tina Fox, and I am the CEO and founder of Turn Mentoring. Today on Turn Talks, we have a new friend of mine, Jessica Francis. I'm excited to connect with Jessica today. We actually found each other at a panel discussion back in November. And whenever I meet somebody who's not only super interesting, but has a great story and can command an audience, then you know that's the right person to bring on a podcast. So a little bit about Jessica. Jessica is the land acquisition manager for Dries Homes here in Northern Virginia. And she is also currently the youngest sitting president of the NVBIA. She'll tell us what those initials are in just a second. She's also my first VCU graduate on the podcast. She's a proud VCU graduate with a degree in psychology. We might ask, well, how do you go from psychology to Dries Homes? We'll get to that in a minute. Jessica also brings nearly a decade of experience in land acquisition and development with Relux Homes, D.R. Horton, and now coming up on 8 years at her current role at Dries. She's passionate about strategic growth, forecasting future communities, and championing women's and younger generation leadership development in home building, all while balancing her life with her husband, their beautiful 2-year-old daughter, and her rambunctious chocolate lab. So she's got a lot of stuff going on. I think we all do. We're going to unpack some of this with Jessica. So Jessica, welcome to Turn Talks. It's so nice to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and just, you gave a little background on how we met. So doing that panel with you was so fun, and I'm like super excited to do this talk with you today.
Yeah, when I met you, I was like, wow, she has just got so much going on. And I wish that I was as positive and connected and like as ambitious as she was when I was her age. And so it's just been great to get to know you since November and now bring you here onto this podcast. So you know who our audience is. And, you know, one of the things that I found so interesting about you when we met is that you had this background in psychology. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes students will say, well, you know, what if I don't end up doing what I studied? Is that going to be a waste of my education? And so why don't you connect the dots for us as far as, okay, you decide on psychology, which by the way, I think is a really cool major.
It is.
And then you end up as one of the few women in land acquisition and this whole business of, you know, building and development. That's not a typical path for a lot of women. So can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you did talk a little bit about kind of my history of careers before I got to Dries, but what's really interesting is that before I even started at Relux, which was really my first builder job, I was working at Keller Williams, and I was literally just like a front desk coordinator and trainer. And the reason I think that that's kind of an important part of the story is because I did not know when I got out of school exactly what I wanted to do. So I kind of took a position where I got to interact with people, and I got the background was it that my mom used to work at that location for Keller Williams, and she said, "Why don't you just go try and like see if you like it and kind of get connected with some people." So what I loved was every single day, every single person that would walk into that office would see me first thing. And so the first thing I got to do was say hi to them, and I'd catch up with them, and I learned about them. So one of my favorite things to do is talk. And that was basically what I got to do in that job, was just talk to people and connect. And from that position and just learning about people, I had a really nice wife of a builder who said, "I would love if you would come and work for me. Every day I see you're like super positive and you're always really helpful. And I just really want you to come try to work at my company." And again, because I didn't feel like I had a huge compass for where I wanted to be initially, I was like, this is great. Like, it's an opportunity. I'll try, I'll shift into something else. So that's kind of how I got into just home building, I guess, in general. And it was to me, it was just cool because, again, it was just me meeting and networking and learning about people at the time. And then after that experience, they kind of threw me into, hey, we need you to learn a bunch of different things in this role. And one of them was land. And I actually had to door knock. So I was literally going to people's houses, door knocking, and saying, "Hi, would you like to sell your property to me?" And when I tell you that that was an extremely humbling experience because
How old were you?
I was 24, maybe 24 or 25.
And they're thinking, who's this baller thinking she can
Yeah,
buy the property in my region?
yes. Yeah, and people were not always kind. And I actually remember coming back from work one day and talking to my dad and saying, "Oh my God, I don't know if I'm good at this job. Like I've been here 3 to 6 months at this point." I said, "I get so upset when people tell me no. Like I get really like I feel hurt. I feel rejected. Like it's a hard experience." And he's like, "Okay, but like what's the worst they can say other than no?" And I said, "I don't know." I said, I haven't really thought about that. All they tell me is no. So like I get a lot of those. And like after 10 no's, it just feels hard to hear. And he's like, "Yeah, but that's literally the worst thing they could tell you is just, no, we don't want to do this."
I have a
And
philosophy on that, Jessica.
yes.
And I actually say it often because like you,
Yeah.
I did cold calling, which cold calling is the
Hard.
worst thing. Yeah.
Yes.
I did it for the early part of my career too. But I often tell people that my favorite word, being that I came from a sales background, is yes. So I'm sure that was your favorite word too.
Oh, yeah.
But I quickly learned, and I think this is where your father was going with it, is that no was my second favorite word. And the reason for that is because both are directional. So
Yeah.
at least I know. Now it stung, but after you hear it 1,000 times,
Yes.
the
It stings less.
it stings less, and then you're like, all right, I can just keep going. So
Yeah.
you end up door knocking, and this
Yes.
was part of your early career.
Yeah. But I felt like what I ended up getting really attached to, because I learned a lot of parts of the business, was like I learned like permitting and grading, and I learned like other aspects of home building. I got to deal with actual homeowners and help them with change order requests. But as I went more and more through that, I was like, the land part was always the coolest part to me. And the reason being was when I did find a property and it was something we ended up building on, I felt so much like pride of ownership of like, hey, I found that property and I helped create I helped get us to the point where we could put a house on it and someone could be purchasing it, now a year later. And I felt like that part of the process was, there's just kind of like, as much as there's the lows, there was like the high of that. And that's what kind of, I feel like, directed me that way. And I only learned that by, again, being exposed to different like pieces of the process initially. And then I just was like, all right, well, now I want to do this full, like, how can I do this for a builder, like a bigger builder? How can I like move this out of just doing something small? Because at the time I felt like I was sort of outgrowing them. And it was just a feeling of like there was only so much only so many opportunities they could give me to move up because they were a very small company. And then I went to work for DR Horton. So,
So in that, and so what? Okay, how old were you when you went to go work for DR Horton?
I was 26, 27 when I kind of shifted over there. So
And
I'd
when you
started around 23, 24 at the other position.
Okay. So just as a recap, because that was a lot, what you just said.
Yeah.
And that was a lot in a short period of time. One,
Yeah.
you just showed up at a job because
Yeah.
your mom happened to be there. And being that you were there all the time and you were kind of just exposed to everybody that was walking through the door,
Yeah.
you always had a great attitude. You got noticed with your great attitude, and you had somebody who saw some level of promise in you
Yep.
and decided to offer you this. And like you said, you didn't have a sense of, well, what am I going to do anyway? So, okay, sure, I'll go try this.
Yeah.
What I also love is that in your trying and doing the door knocking and all those other things that they were saying, oh, now we want to teach you this and you're going to have to do that. You quickly learned what you didn't like to do in
Yeah.
order to become what you did like to do, which if they have landman in Texas, we got landwoman in the DMV,
Yeah.
that being Jessica Francis. So now you're the landwoman of the DMV and you really like that. And
Yeah.
this is finally, years. How old were you when you graduated? 21, 22?
Yeah, I was 20. I graduated, like I did an extra semester. I was like a fifth year person, but I did with my extra semester, I think I still was 21. I had not turned 22 yet.
Okay. So within about 6 years,
Yes.
it took you some time to figure out what I like, what I don't like. But
Yep.
you showed up and you had somebody who saw something in you and you decided to go with it. And
Yeah.
okay. So now
And I said yes a lot. So I said yes to a lot of times when people ask me for help on things that might not have been my typical role too. I will say that. I feel like I always said yes because I was like, maybe I'll learn something from this. So now, again, fast forward, I don't say yes to everything now. And I think you said this to me, Tina, like no is a complete sentence. Yes, it is. So I'm learning that. But in the early days, I did feel like it benefited me to be able to say yes because I didn't have like barriers for time like I do now. So I felt like that really served me well in my early years because it was just like people were like, oh, Jessica's extremely helpful. Like she's willing to pitch in and she's willing to learn. So yeah, that really helped me a lot in the early days.
Well, let's talk about that because I know you're passionate about this. I know this is a topic that when we were on that panel, you were talking about the balance of things, and you have now fast forwarded to having a lovely family,
Yeah.
including your daughter and your chocolate lab, and so now it's not just you. Now
Yes.
it's you and more. And so you talked about boundaries. What do you want to share about boundaries and where you are right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So boundaries, boundaries are extremely tough for me. They are probably the most difficult thing that I have had to learn since the start of my career. And the reason being is that again, I have this tendency to want to like people please and be like, how can I help somebody? How can I be someone that is a team player, which I feel like is, again, that's a lot of times what you hear is like, try to be that. But people also just don't teach you that it's okay to say no and to say that I only have so much finite time that I can give to this particular project, or I can only do these particular items to be able to do my job well. So what I just started to learn was that, again, I think I started to learn that boundary, and mostly because my home life and my home time there's nothing more important than that to me. Absolutely nothing more important. And as my kid now is almost gonna be 3, she notices that I'm not there. So I think I became more mindful of that only because I have a little person watching me that notices if I can't show up to stuff. So the boundaries are absolutely essential. And I think what is the hardest thing I find before was that I had a lot of guilt around it. I either had guilt that I wasn't showing up for certain things at work, or I had guilt that I wasn't showing up for certain things at home. And instead I just said, I am giving my time to this at this particular time. I'm not going to feel bad about it because I know I'm giving it a finite piece of time. And then I'm going to be home and I'm going to be fully involved. Phone away. I'm not picking up anything. I'm not texting anyone. I'm here. I'm present, and my kid can see that. So I think that's the hardest thing that's around is the guilt. Like I feel like you can't escape it.
Well, and so how have you gotten through some of that guilt? You just deal with it, you know that it's there.
Yes. Now I tell myself that there's absolutely nothing productive about it. I mean, me feeling guilty only takes away from me being present either at home or being present at work. And if I can't be present, then in either of those locations, that I'm really not able to give my best. So I think now, to be realistic, I do have days where I come home and I tell my husband, I need 15 minutes to sit alone in silence in my room. Nobody talk to me. Don't come bother me. I don't want to see Ellie, the dog. I just want to be in silence, whether that's to decompress so that I can transition out of being in work mode, or, I mean, truly speaking, sometimes I'm just like, I want to cry. Like I'm having a bad day and I want to cry and I want to do it alone. I think that that's also a way for you to kind of release some of the emotion around, because sometimes there is emotion around the boundaries, but like you don't actually deal with it in the moment. So I
Yeah.
feel like my way is like, how can I find a way to still deal with it? Because it's going to come back and affect me in some way. And so I think it's unrealistic to say you're not going to have that. It's more just like, when do you give it space and time? And for me, it's like I do a couple times a week, give it space and time to just be like, I'm feeling a lot of feelings. I'm going to actually feel them. And then I'm going to be able to be present in the rest of my life.
So a couple things that you said that I wanted to highlight, because
Yeah.
one, you never said the word mom. And
Yeah.
and I actually appreciate that because I don't think that what you described is just a mom thing. I think
Yeah.
what you described is a parent thing. I've worked with plenty
Yes.
of men who have also said, I'm always on the road. I'm missing these ball games. I'm missing these dance recitals. And they have the same level of guilt that you just shared. And so I think that that's a universal thing when people
Yeah.
choose to become more than themselves and add extra people in their lives.
Totally.
So
Yes.
I appreciate that you said all of that in a way where it was very inclusive. The other thing, with the boundaries and the saying no, is you have now decided to become the youngest president of NVBIA. So
Right.
I'm going to ask you one for the audience that doesn't know what NVBIA stands for.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what it stands for, and then tell us what led to your decision to take that on? Because I'm assuming one of the things is you've decided, on purpose, and you said that you don't multitask. It doesn't sound like. It sounds like you're like, I'm either going to be in work or I'm going to be in home. I'm not going to be baby on the lap and trying to type and write a proposal
No.
all at the same time. Like you have this not just boundary, but you have a degree of separation that
Yeah.
allows you to be really strong in all these areas. So talk to us about the NVBIA presidency part and why you chose to do that.
Yes, okay. And for the benefit of the audience, it's Northern Virginia Builders Industry Association, which is like kind of a mouthful, which is why we say NVBIA.
I got it.
And so I've been part of that organization since I was at Relux. So that was kind of like at that 24-year-old range. So it's been over a decade now, which is awesome. And there is so much I benefited from over time in creating networks and relationships. And at a certain point in time, there's a little like piece of this that it's actually a 5-year track to get into presidency. So you have to serve in so many roles before you can actually get up to where I'm at right now. So there was kind of a point where I had to kick this off, and I was actually now, because I'm going to be 36 this year, I basically was 31. So this was before I had, like, before I was pregnant with my first daughter, before I had thought about any other kids, like anything. And, I was kind of asked, hey, what do you like? Would you want to be in a leadership role? And it's funny because I came home and talked to my husband, and I was like, my God, but like we talked about having a kid next year. And what if I'm president of my association at the same time I'm having a kid? Now, mind you, I was president of a chapter while I was pregnant with my daughter, and I had to take leave, and we just kind of made it work. Like people filled in and helped out. So the reason, part of it was that there was that leadership track. The other
Which, by
piece,
the way, being pregnant is not a disease. It's a
no,
temporary state.
I know.
Okay. Okay. So when you're like, how is this all going to work out? It's like, it's a temporary state. It's not a
Yeah.
disease. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm not gone for good. Yeah. Like, in my mind, it was like just a lot of things swirling because I felt such like a commitment to like, oh, I have to show up for everything. But as time went on, I tried to remind myself, I have a paid position. I have a volunteer position. This is still my volunteer position. I enjoy it, but I have to treat it as such, like there's things that I can manageably accomplish and do. And so when last year came up and I was VP, I had I will give a little credit to the person that was on the track above me. His name is Safe. He was so instrumental in just being like a support and like a role model and a leader. So I want to give him some credit because if he came up the whole 4 years in the track with me, and I was VP behind him. So I think that was another aspect, was I had this confidence level of like, okay, I know I have the 5-year track, but I also know I have someone who's incredibly smart and connected, who's gonna like bring me into the fold and teach me things and also give me some confidence and responsibility on my own. So that was like the second piece of it.
That's huge.
Huge.
Let's just say his whole name, and if you know where he is today, like let's
Yes. So his full name is Safalden Rahman, but I probably said that wrong. That's why he goes by Safe, because it's
Okay.
just a little bit easier to say. He's Muslim. His background is Muslim, and he's very connected to the Muslim community. So he kind of speaks sometimes at like mosques. He does a incredible job again of being in a really connected network, and he's also a parent to 4 kids who are all older. Like he's got one of them going into college soon. So
is he still working in the building?
yeah, he is. So he's actually a very he does real estate development all over Northern Virginia, but basically essentially he gets projects entitled and through the planning part of it. And he's sold quite a few projects. We've worked on several with him as well. So there was a land connection there as well that kind of like kept us that kind of, I guess, sparked initially our friendship and our mentorship, and then that kind of continued to build. And I still call him for stuff. I'm like,
Well, I was going to say we like to highlight our mentors on this show for
yeah,
obvious reasons. So we gave him the shout out, and he just needs to know that he made a difference in
yes.
allowing somebody to take the leadership role behind him through example, and that's really important.
So that was kind of like the second piece of me saying yes, was there's a timeline to track, there's a really good mentor. And I feel like the third piece of it was that as I saw, or as I kind of got through more and more of organization stuff, and I saw people in their leadership roles, I thought to myself, man, there's certain things like I actually started to envision like, oh, I have kind of this own vision of like how I feel like NVBIA could have improvements, or how we could do better, or things that we could look at ahead. And you and I have talked about this before, Tina, which like I really do feel strongly about this, which is like just, I guess mentorship is one thing. I also call it succession planning. There's a lot of people in our industry and in leadership roles who maybe in the next 5 years will not be. You know, they're going to be retiring, they're going to be doing other pursuits. And I kind of started to see that a little bit as I came up through NVBIA. And I said, man, I really want to be involved with like helping make sure that this organization continues to have engaged people who can feel confident doing the roles that some of these people that are leaving right now are doing. So I feel like that vision started to like kind of show up for me. And then I was like, okay, I need to figure out a way to like get to a place where I can implement this, and to me that was like presidency, like that's how I can do it. I can get into my president role and have like an impact.
So I love your vision of seeing that there is this silver tsunami of people, particularly in your industry, that have been there for decades, that have institutional knowledge, that, yes, we have AI and all this stuff, but at the end of the day, their knowledge may sunset in that tsunami. And you don't want that to sunset. You want that to carry forward. You want their name to carry forward. You want their knowledge to carry forward. So let me ask you, do you have enough people behind that have been hired that can come in and do these jobs? Or are you all struggling with finding the right people? Because this isn't one of those things where it's like, hey, we're going to go down to VCU and we're going to recruit. I'm assuming, right? We're going to start recruiting for land people at VCU. So how do people get in? I mean, I know how you got into it, quite on accident.
Yes.
But do you have enough people coming in to take on this knowledge that might be exiting?
So that's a good question. I think probably a short answer would be no in some senses, because I do feel like the home building industry is still an industry where we don't have a significant amount. Workforce is a huge issue for us, but we don't have a significant amount of young people who think of construction and home building and land as industries they could break into. They're kind of like, I don't know. I don't know a lot about it. I don't have the degree, kind of like me, and they might feel like they can't. But I also
you're the part of that industry that is not shown on HGTV.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. We're not. No, we're not. But that's my point, is that it's so multifaceted, and our home building association, I mean, land is definitely, there's definitely a good amount of people that are in land, but even that, I was joking. I would probably be considered like a middle level or a mid-level in terms of my experience in land. But if you look at it's both ends of the spectrum. You usually have people that are really, really doing it for 30 years, and then you got people that have been doing it for like 2 to 3 to 4. And so you've got no one in the middle, which I feel like is tough. So I do think when you talk about the transition, we probably don't have enough. Now, I think the positive has been that this year, I thought initially that my goal was going to be, oh, I really want to help with like strategic planning and like a 5 year, which is, of course, hugely important to me. But then I started to shift, and I had people reach out to me that were at their companies, and they said, hey, I'd love to be more involved. And it's people who just literally called me out of the blue. They don't know me extremely well, but they know that I'm president. And they've said, I'd love to get coffee and ask you, like, how could I be more involved? And all of a sudden I started to say, oh my God, maybe I'm actually bridging some inclusivity. Like maybe I'm creating an environment where people are like, I feel comfortable to come and talk to Jessica and ask to be more included. So then I was like, maybe there are more people than I would have originally thought, just because if you look at it from the outside, you're like, okay, yeah, I mean, we're still a little sparse when it comes to the new people coming in, but maybe it's that there's people there and they just don't feel like they have a platform to say, like, what do I, or they don't know where to go. Like, they don't have the confidence to say, should I be involved in this organization? Like, should I be a chapter president? Should I be in legislative committee? Like, we've got so many avenues. So that was really cool. And then all of a sudden I kind of shifted to maybe that's more my role than I thought, like initially. Of course, I care about like younger generations and women, but I realized that it's more than that. People care about reaching out and asking me for that help too.
I love that. Now, so you and I had talked at one point in time about the darker side of this whole silver tsunami and the knowledge moving on, and that is that sometimes, as wonderful as we can position it and say, oh, okay, well, these folks are moving on to retirement. We want to capture their knowledge, help them get connected with, others within the organization so that we've got this seamless transition. You also shared with me that sometimes it's not so seamless because people are worried about, well, if I give my knowledge away, then I'm no longer useful. So talk to me about your thoughts around that, because that was an interesting comment.
I know. We did talk about that. And that's a very real thing. I would probably say that it's that piece of it, which is that I don't want to feel like I'm not an integral part of my company by whether that's, training or just sharing the knowledge piece. And so, people who are retiring that have been there for 30, 25, 30 years, you can't just do 3 months before you leave and that's enough. Like it is like a process. But I think the other part of it I hear is, well, I'm so busy. Like, how do I give myself how could I give a couple hours of my week to train somebody? So I hear that too. I hear the busyness factor will be so difficult for me to put in that time. But I'm like, in a 40-hour work week, like 2 hours should be nothing. Like, I don't feel like it is, but I hear that. And then I do feel like there's also this sort of like, I did things this way. I'm kind of holding on to my process on this. I feel like it's good. I feel like it's a good process. And I feel uncomfortable with having to change that or having to modify that or having to accommodate a different style. And so I hear a lot of that as well. And so it is really tough. And the thing is I try to balance between the respect of like the people who have been there for so long that deserve to have opportunities to be like still involved and like, and be deeply embedded in the industry. But then I'm also like, how do we get those people to feel like sharing the information is a positive thing? Like it's a benefit. How do we get those people also to say this different way? Sure, it's not my usual way, but I'm open to trying it. So I feel like there is not like there's a kind of a mismatch between those. And so that's what creates some of the friction of change.
So for our audience, for the other leaders that are listening, Jessica's information is going to be posted below here. Reach out to Jessica because this is a bridge that she is trying to build. She's trying to solve these issues. I heard at least three. One is this is my way, and I don't necessarily want to do it any other way. So that's something that she needs to solve for in building this bridge.
Yes.
I'm too busy is another thing she's trying to solve for. Although I think she's already, I can see her face. She's like, I'm not buying the I'm too busy.
No.
but how do you work with someone who is quote unquote too busy? And then the real fear, which I think a lot of people have as they're considering retirement, is how am I going to matter? And Jessica, I love the fact that you already said this is not a 3-month thing and done.
No.
What I've seen in a lot of industries is this institutional survivalist character that comes up, right? It's like, I'm going to keep myself busy. I'm going to hold on to the knowledge. I'm going to make myself of importance. And so that way I can't be let go. And that is really a scarcity model as opposed to an abundance model. But to switch people in their mindset from scarcity to abundance, that is a big paradigm shift. So I know you're going to do an amazing job because of your level of enthusiasm, because of your optimism. But if there's anybody out there that wants to, give Jessica their 2 cents, I know that she's open to taking feedback on these things.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I think it, and I like you and I talked about abundance. We also talked about at one point authenticity. So I feel like that has been really beneficial for me to try to show up and be very open about what my life's like and that I'm in my extremely busy season, that I have a lot of stuff going on at work, that I am like that I am not perfect in any way at doing my role as president. It's a volunteer position. I do my best, but I feel like that aspect of it has made this role more fun, and it's kind of disarmed people to be able to share their experience and what they see trying to be a part of association too, which has been huge. So I take that strongly to heart. I appreciate that people, I guess, trust me to come and say, hey, I want to be more involved. How can I be? And trust me to tell that information.
You know, your volunteer role, even though you dedicate a lot of time to that and obviously effort, it seems like you were very purposeful in bringing that role into your life, because it also augments your paid role.
Yeah.
As far as how you think, how you work with people, different ideas. And so it's a nice 1-2 punch that you have going for you in your career planning. Now, I'm going to, I hope I'm allowed to talk about this, but before we even got on air,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I said, how are you? And you said, fine. And I said,
Good.
where's the trepidation in that? And without naming any names, you shared a real thing that you're dealing with today. And I love the fact that you just preempted it by saying, I'm not perfect in my role. You know, I'm still learning things. So I want to bring up for our audience, right before we get on this podcast, Jessica tells me about a difficult situation. So she's doing this podcast with me, but she has to have a call after this call today to deal with the situation. So let's just talk about, you know, the difficult situations that you have to deal with in your life. And you can use today's as an example. And how are you managing through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you gave me great advice. So thank you, because now I can walk away with that. But yeah, when I hopped on, and tried to say, I did have in the back of my mind kind of this situation. And it was something where he felt particularly emotionally charged on this topic and had a sort of a reaction that I was not totally expecting in the moment, because it was a very kind of calm, relaxed conversation up until we got to this point that was revolved around timing. And because I work in a role where I'm negotiating contracts and time is extremely valuable to every single person that I work with, he got upset and did not like that there was some additional time left to kind of wrap this and get it to a closure and be in contract. And because, again, this was not something I was expecting to happen, what I'd shared with Tina was that after he was done saying what he was saying, I basically decided I was in fawn response. So my fawn response is, if someone gets upset, I want to try to smooth over a situation. I want to try to people please. I want to try to breeze through and be very understanding and accommodating. And that is my nature in a situation where I may feel uncomfortable, or I feel like off guard, like I wasn't expecting that to happen. And instead of doing that, which is my typical response, I just said, hey, like to take a pause on this. I want to talk about it with my team, and I'm going to get back with you tomorrow, and I'll find time to talk with you. And the call, I mean, when I say the call pretty much ended after that, there was nothing negative. He said, okay, thank you, and we hung up. But I felt like so much better when I got off that call to just be like, because I was feeling intense and I was feeling upset. And so for me to be able to just pause was such a huge thing. And you know, Tina, you shared why that was important. And I do feel like people don't feel like pause is an option. I feel like sometimes you think, I've got to deal with this now. Like if it's there's just this urgency factor, but someone else's urgency doesn't have to be my urgency. And so I just have to remind myself of that. And I deal with that, by the way, constantly. I don't always deal with people being that emotionally charged. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But in those situations, I pause.
So I felt like when you said that, when you share, first of all, thank you for sharing something that was on your mind, because I was like, oh, we gotta clear this before we just go and have fun on this podcast.
Yeah.
But when you shared that with me, you reminded me and taught me again about the pause, because we live in Northern Virginia. We are in a fast-paced environment. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants everything done yesterday. And sometimes pause is the right thing. And to match anger with anger is, the road rage that we see here is pretty incredible. But to
Yeah.
match anger with anger isn't always the best method unless you're a gladiator in the arena. And so you reminded me of that. And then I'd never heard the term, because I had to think about it. When Jessica said
Yeah.
I went into fawn mode, I was like, what word did she just use? And I was like, she used fawn, Fawn. And when
Yeah.
I thought of a baby fawn, all of a sudden everything in my body just relaxed. I was like, oh, baby fawn, so cute. Like,
Yeah.
don't protected the baby fawn. And so, Jessica, she's going to have this conversation today. I hope my advice works out.
Yes.
But I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with telling this person that the reason you took the pause, because we had talked about the fact that maybe this person's thinking, you punted me. Why would you punt me? Why are you delaying this further? And I think her doing a very brief explanation of, thank you for giving me the pause. I go into fawn mode sometimes when, there's a lot coming at me and I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. I said, I don't know how that wouldn't disarm somebody because it's very authentic. It is vulnerable. But it also shows that you are in control of yourself and that you are within a power to present in a way that is going to be beneficial. So I loved your example. And thank you for letting us bring it up. 'Cause I know you're not through it yet, so we're dying.
It's okay. But it's a real life example of what I deal with in my role. I mean, like I said, that is a tiny percentage of what I deal with. A lot of what I deal with is like fun and exciting, and it's making these relationships and connections, and it's positive, but there is this other side to it. And like you said, it's kind of the hard side, the darker side. But I mean, but that's realistic. I mean, in my mind, I always remind myself, no matter how long I get or how well I get along with someone, I could always see that other side too.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. We talked a little bit about your past. We talked a lot about today, and we talked some about the future. But I want to go back to your past because we do have an audience. We do have an audience of students. You're Rams. Right. Go Rams.
Go Rams.
Going to be listening to you. And you told me the most hysterical story, and I was like, "What? What are you talking about?" So let's go back to the younger Jessica. You were a little bit of a rebel. You're a tough cookie and a little bit of a rebel, but you survived and you somehow got yourself out of ECU with a degree. So you want to share that?
Yeah, I do. Yes, no, I can definitely share that.
And mom and dad, I'm so sorry. Your daughter is amazing. So mom and dad, no shade being thrown whatsoever.
Everything turned out okay. I think that's why I could look back and see it and kind of laugh at this now. But yeah, it was my freshman year. So and it's really honestly totally fitting that it was my freshman year, because when I came out of high school, I was not like a big partier. Like, I had a very small social circle. So when I went into high school or college, I felt like I was in a totally different world. I was like, oh my God, there are so many people. There's parties every night. There's so many opportunities for me to do things that have zero to do with school. And so for me, I was just like, how can I get as many of those opportunities as possible? Because again, I had been at home and I'd been pretty, I might not say sheltered, because my parents let me do a lot, but I just had a very small, kind of easygoing high school life. So what happened was that my first semester in general, I actually came in with a semester's worth of college credits. So I'd already done all my AP classes. And I don't know, I mean, I think in retrospect, I wish it was a good thing, because actually my freshman year, I did not do well at all. But I got in trouble. So it was sort of a hodgepodge of like really difficult things, because not only was I not being consistent in showing up to class, which was horrible, but I mean, honestly, it's my truth. Like, I was not going to class consistently. I was not being a great student. I was not reaching out to home a lot, to be honest, because I was kind of happy with my freedom and my independence. And then on top of that, I had a really good friend group, but I had this pressure because I was so new and I wanted to be liked, that I was like, I'm going to do stuff that I probably wouldn't usually do, again, because it's not part of my character, but I was trying to fit in.
Yep.
And one of those things was that we were all out shopping at a local mall nearby, and a couple of my friends were like, oh, I want to buy ABC things. And I said, well, I don't want to buy this. I think I'm just going to take it. I'm going to just take it, put it in I know. I'm like, oh, I'm just going to put this in my purse and leave. Mind you, I was at a Macy's, and I had no idea that Macy's had like same-sex security guards that actually like were able to see if you were taking something from a fitting room. So I was very not in the know about how they operated. Everyone's like, how did you not know that? But I did get caught leaving the mall, or when I left the department store before I left the mall. And, and unfortunately, they actually made the comment of, hey, this is really not that big a deal, but because you're in X county, which at the time was Richmond County, they were like, we are going to be a little tougher on you because we don't like this type of stuff in this particular area. So I literally, yeah, I actually, and I shared with Dina that I thought because I was 18 that it was going to be expunged from my record fairly quickly. That was not the case. But I had to go through, I think, to be honest, it was mostly just the civil charges that my parents kind of dealt with. But I mean, it was a very horrible experience. I mean, my parents pulled me that semester and said, you need to come home. They took me out of VCU and said, you come home, you go to GMU, and you do a semester, and let's see how you do, and let's see if we can give you back the independence you had at VCU because we don't trust you to be there right now. And I was embarrassed. I mean, I was truly embarrassed that I had done something so, like, to me, I was like, why would I ever do that? Like, that's not me at all. Like, what was I thinking? And when I came home into GMU, total 180, because I ended up on the dean's list that semester. So I went from literally flunking and being like a vagrant
Partier.
to like, yeah, partier, vagrant. And then I was like, oh, now I am on the dean's list at GMU. So it was just, to me, it's a blip. But to be honest, it was a very eye-opening experience for me.
Well, so that sobering experience was not expunged until when?
Yeah, so the reason that so to me, it was like, I just wanted to forget that. Honestly, after it happened, I was like, I want to pretend like that never happened. And when I
Sorry,
graduated
and here I
college,
am like, oh, let's go.
no, it's okay.
Jessica, let's
Well,
scream this.
it's been a long time now. So like I said, I feel like I have a lot of perspective since then. But when I hit like when I got out of college and I was looking for my first jobs, Keller Williams did not have any background check stuff. It was fairly easy to get through. But D.R. Horton, which was my next job, and at that time, again, I was like 24, 25. I was just at that like range. They did a background check, and I told them, well, no, there's nothing. I don't have anything on my background. But I had been under the impression that it would be expunged after 4 years. So I was like, there's nothing left. Turns out it was a longer period than that to get expunged from my record.
Are you clear now?
I am clear.
Okay.
Yes, it didn't come up on the Drees one, which was funny. But even still, I proactively told Drees. I did do something because I was worried it might come up again. And with D.R. Horton, the worry was I didn't bring it up. And then they said, hey, we actually did find something on your background check. And I felt the same embarrassment level because I was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that was going to show up. So of course I did, like, we had to do like an explanation letter, and they were very understanding.
So this whole thing is,
Yeah.
when you told me the story, we were laughing about it a while back. So, and she gave me permission to bring it up again.
Yes, I did.
But I will say this is not shame or shade at all.
No, yeah.
But what I loved about your explanation is there was a lot that you learned from that. You turned yourself around very quickly. It wasn't even who you were to begin with. You were trying to just fit in. You had way too much independence, which, I tell even my own kids, I'm like, look, if you are privileged enough to go to college, then there are three things that I think are happening at college. One is obviously you're getting an education. This time you get to choose what it is you want to study. Hopefully you're choosing something really cool. Two, you are there to establish your independence in a little bit of a protected bubble, like a snow globe, right? Because you got campus security, you got all these people that are doing
Yes.
very similar things to you. Everybody's there for the student. And then third, it's develop your network. But you in doing the independence thing, by the way, my freshman year, I was a great student in high school, and then freshman year, just like you, I'm Asian American. There was a lot of emphasis on grades, making sure I got straight A's. And then I go away to my campus, and I was like, parties, what's going on? This is so awesome. And I got a little out of control on, focusing on what I was there for, which is to study
Right.
and to understand things. So I'm not innocent in that either, but you got through all of that. And I guess even for us parents, and now that you're a parent, we survive these things, right?
I can't believe my parents, I feel like, handled that so well, because now thinking about having to deal with that with my daughter, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how I would react. I don't know that I would have been as calm as they were the right level of strict, and this is really we're really disappointed without being over the top in a reaction, which I really appreciated because I already had so much like shame around it anyway. I felt bad.
Sure.
And I don't feel like that now, by the way. That's why I can talk about this experience because I don't feel that now. I do look back on that experience and say that was a really just a poor decision, right? So it's really nice to have that perspective, but I just feel like it's a lesson in just try not to be extremely hard on yourself because you make a mistake doesn't doom you for life, and being able to have successful careers and, like it's okay to make a mistake. And at the time I felt like it was horrible. So
yes. And we all live in glass houses. So
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're able to share. Okay. So
Yeah.
we've done past, present, future.
Yeah.
I'm really curious, if you could leave our audience with, your own mentorship moment, what are some of the things that you would like to share with the younger version of yourself, coming up through college and moving forward? What are some of the pearls you'd like to share with them?
That's a really good question.
Or what would you like to tell yourself? Like, just
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
you're 20, you're still at
Yes.
you're still at VCU, and
Yeah.
you are a psych major,
Right.
and you have no idea what you're going to do after school, but you really like psychology.
Yes.
What would you tell your younger self?
So I feel like probably one of the most important things for what I do now, which is why I feel like I'm really successful. I mean, it's one thing to learn and be smart and to like have a lot of knowledge, just general knowledge, which you get at school and you get exposure to lots of stuff. But something that I didn't lean into as much back in college that I feel like would have been helpful was just the networking aspect. I feel like for me, I did not realize how integral like my relationships would be as I continued to grow in my career. And I didn't realize how much honing that skill was important. It's when you're like because I was always kind of a naturally more extroverted person. So it was easier for me generally to be like, I'm gonna, go and strike up a conversation or make a friend or talk to somebody, even though I feel a little uncomfortable. I have now realized that is also, it's a learned skill. You can learn in situations to say, you can still be an introverted person, but you can learn to be like, I'm going to put myself out there, even if it's a little uncomfortable. And then the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. I wish when I was in my 20s, I had been able to do that more, because I think I found a lot of excuses for not doing certain things. And so I feel like that's one thing. I also feel like I was a perfectionist. Okay, I was a huge perfectionist in my 20s. I felt like things could only be done one way. And I also felt like if I didn't do it and one little thing went wrong, it was a failure on my part. And what I've learned now is that the things that have not gone perfectly and that I've had some failures on have been huge learning successes for me in the long term, because I've been able to take away something from that. But there used to be that feeling of, I feel guilty it didn't go the way it was supposed to go. I feel bad that the outcome wasn't what I thought it was going to be, or I didn't perform the way that I thought I was going to perform. And I spent a lot of time in my 20s just like recapping things in my head all the time and replaying things and said, well, I would have done it this way, I would have done it this way. I don't do that anymore. I never do.
No more shoulda, coulda, woulda.
No, it's again, to me, it goes along the same lines of the guilt feeling. Like you can't, there's nothing to me that's productive about it. I think it's important to kind of have a takeaway from the experience, but it's not okay to like have a narrative in your head that like you feel guilty, because I don't think that's helpful. And the last thing is that started at VCU with this idea of having an undergrad in psych, which I think, at the time, the reason I liked psych is because it was the understanding of people to me. It was, how do I understand how people tick? And to me, then how do I understand myself better? There was this whole kind of like introspective aspect of me picking that. And I didn't really know career-wise where I wanted to go. Obviously, I went a totally different direction. But if I could look back and try to figure out what I feel like I gained from that, and I could have brought forward in my 20s, and I really didn't start to do this until my 30s, was this idea of, if you feel your feelings more, you'll understand them better. If you push them down, you create a space and environment where you think that feelings are a negative thing. So I wish that my younger self had realized that my feelings were actually my superpower, that me being able to understand my emotions in a moment helped me to identify, move through it, and again, be present. I feel like for me, it was always like, how can I be present instead of be stuck in like ruminating on a thought? So if I were back in my 20s, I wish I had told myself that take all that knowledge you're grabbing from like psych and remind yourself that feeling feelings and having emotions and understanding them better is a positive thing and it can be your superpower. And now I feel like it is because I can do things like take a pause. I can do things like ask for a moment alone because I know I need it.
I love that. Socrates would be so proud of
right,
you.
I know.
That's right. Know thyself. Jessica
Yeah.
just modernized it for all of us.
Yeah.
Jessica Francis, it has been my pleasure to have you on Turn Talks, the podcast. It was so fun to meet you the first time. And every time we engage, I just learn a little bit more. And you're doing amazing work in a field that, there's not a lot that look like you, act like you. But you are making great changes. I wish you the best in your presidency at NVBIA and at Drees Homes. For those of you from Drees that are listening, you got yourself a great winner here. She's got a lot of great things ahead of her. And for those that are interested in getting to know Jessica, how can we get in touch with you, Jessica? Is it LinkedIn? Is there an email? Is there a social media account? What would you like to direct us to?
So LinkedIn's the best. I check that constantly. I'm doing updates. I do my quarterly presidential letters on there if you ever want to hear what I've been up to. And I put lots of Drees updates and news on land. So that's probably the best. And I'll definitely give you my email as well. If anyone wants to reach out and ask questions, I'm happy to. And thank you for having me, Tina. I really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. All right, everyone. That's this episode of Turn Talks. We'll see you on our next episode. And I hope you have a great day out there. Look forward to being a mentor or look forward to getting mentored in your own life. It makes a big difference, as we heard today on our episode with Jessica. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Turn Talks. To learn more about our robust mentoring platform, visit us at turnmentoring.com. Join us next time for more enlightening conversations.